Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars, Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12. We come together on Monday. Sunday, you'll do a show, definitely, that releases on Sunday because this game is so late. If the headline is Utah shocks BYU, wins at Rice-Eccles Stadium, what went wrong?
BYU turned it over a bunch. That's really the way that this is going to turn on its head. Now, Utah traditionally has been a very good team at turning opponents over. That's just kind of the hallmark of Kyle Whittingham's tenure at Utah. They routinely get pick sixes. They force fumbles, and they set their offense up in great field position, much like what BYU's done this season, Drake. But the season-long issue for Utah defensively is the fact that they have not been able to turn opponents over. So if they want to win this game, they need to get back to doing what they have done traditionally, and that is force turnovers and cause BYU to have to play catch up.
Jake, I've heard the word luck a lot recently about BYU. Are the Cougars lucky?
Yeah, there's a luck element to all that. It's an oblong ball that bounces different ways, but a lot of the time when it comes to what BYU's defense has done this year is they've created their own luck. They've been in good position to pick off passes. They have punched the ball out when given the opportunity, when a running back may be getting held up at the line. They have created plenty of turnovers, like I said, creating their own luck, but there is an element of luck in all of this. Like I said, that ball, it bounces weird ways, and the simple fact of the matter is BYU's been the beneficiary of it this year, considering last year they were very, very poor at turning opponents over.
Jake, in a segment where we're giving some flowers, at least, to Utah. Speaking of flowers, they went to 2 Rose Bowls and did lose both. Just going to throw that one in there for you, Jake. Just going to throw that in there for you.
Utah fans jumping down your throat here, sir.
I'm trying to give. I have the BYU guy on the show talking about why Utah might win. So I wanted to offer you flowers from myself.
Okay.
We've mentioned a bit. We touched on it. BYU is 60th right now offensively on 3rd and 4th down success. Those combined, you've talked about how setting yourself up for 4th down means that you didn't get a first down on 3rd. That can skew that statistic. But for Utah, their defense is still 6th in the nation on 3rd and 4th down. 29.5%. That's the small rate that opponents are actually converting on late downs. Should that worry BYU fans?
Absolutely, because you got to be able to sustain drives if you want to win this football game. And if you're going 3 and out constantly, guess what? I don't care how poor that offense is for Utah. If you can't stay on the field to generate points, you're going to have a tough time winning that football game. That's only going to embolden Utah in front of their home fans. This is a place BYU fans, BYU players know how crazy of an environment Rice-Eccles Stadium is, especially when BYU is there in Salt Lake City. I've experienced it multiple times in my life. There are very few places like it in terms of the home field advantage, and you do not, do not want to give Utah any extra juice, as it were, and that would obviously be going 3 and out constantly.
Jake, the opposite side for BYU and Utah, movable object meet stoppable force. We've already talked. BYU defensively, 75th in the country on 3rd and 4th down. Utah offensively, 122nd at converting on 3rd and 4th down. That is tough to do. 32.6%. Pretty darn bad. I just don't like who breaks here? It's tough to say, oh, wow, BYU is going to certainly dominate that category because BYU is also not very strong on late downs defensively.
They've got to, if you're speaking from the Utah perspective, they've got to win this. They absolutely have to stay on the field because I don't care how it comes from the Utah side of things. They just have to find a way to generate points. This is an offense that has been stuck in neutrals far too often. I know that Houston got a big upset this past weekend after beating Utah the previous week, but still, that's a game that Utah thought they should have had in the bag, and they still found a way to lose that game. They have scored 24 points the last 2 games combined. That is just a recipe for disaster. So whether it's Brandon Rose, whether it's Isaac Wilson under center, you need to get ahead of the chains. And that means Mekhi Bernard, Jalen Glover from the Utah side of things. They got to be able to continue to move the chains and keep that offense on the field. And yeah, even if it is you're getting 3 points, you got to build that confidence with this offense. It's been a slog for the Utes. So if they want to win this game, they've got to win that battle. But from the BYU side of things, the BYU defense, they've got to show that, okay, we figured some things out in this bye week. We changed up our philosophy on 3rd down, and we are not going to allow them to stay on the field. We're going to continue to force punt after punt after punt. And if they can do that, that's going to give BYU a major opportunity in this game.
Jake, I think you said Utah scored 24 combined their last 2 games. 21.
Oh, 21. Okay.
20, isn't that? Yeah, it's even worse. That's that. You were trying to give them a little boost there. It's actually 21 points against Houston and TCU. They scored 19 against Arizona State, 10 against Arizona. So tough sledding the last few weeks offensively for the Utes. And that's because the greatest quarterback of all time, Cam Rising, has obviously been out. Jake, that said, I keep giving you reasons why Utah could possibly beat BYU analytically. And I want to throw that out the window because usually you do in a rivalry game. What about this rivalry gives Utah at least a fighter's chance? Because that's usually that word rivalry means that the underdog has some moxie.
Well, we've talked a lot about luck on today's show already. There is a prevailing notion amongst a subset of BYU fans that I know very well that they talk about Ute luck, Drake, and they have talked about it for that 9-game win streak that Utah had during the 2010s. They talked often about there was a pick six, or there was a baffling turnover, or a blocked kick. Something crazy happened to help Utah win a game against BYU when it felt like BYU might break through. That luck, if it shows up in this game, it's going to be a much needed element for Utah to spring an upset over the 9th-ranked Cougars, because they want nothing more than to re-energize their season. And the best way to do that is to break your rivals' perfect season, push them to 8-1, and then push yourself back above 500 and get yourself within a game of bowl eligibility. That's a way to re-energize your season. And that's what Utah's got to be focused on this week.
I do think that Utah's defense is still good. People are going to point and say, I'm not really sure. But hey, I mention all the time, you have to have an offense that complements your defense, a defense that complements your offense. And the BYU does that so well. Hey, the defense forced a turnover, got into the red zone. I now worry a lot less about BYU's offense being able to finish off drives. Seems as though A-Rod has figured that out at this portion of the season. For Utah, their offensive success rate is 113th in the nation. Defensive success rate is 11th. It's that imbalance. Their defense is in such tough spots because the offense is so putrid. Jake, with that being said, with the analytics showing that BYU should win by 16 on paper, if you lose to this team, how devastating is that for Kalani, Sitake, and company?
Oh, it's going to hurt. There's zero doubt about that. It will be one of those ones that stings, because you look at, as you mentioned, the disparity between that offense and defense. Utah's defense has held their team in every game. Despite this 4-game losing streak, that defense has held every opponent down. You mentioned the fact that so it's 19, 10, 7, and you said 14. That's an average of 10 points per game on average, if my math is correct. Maybe a little north of that. Don't do math on there. I learned that many, many moons ago. But regardless, the defense has held Utah's team in these games. The offense has absolutely failed them in every facet of it. So, yeah, if speaking from the BYU perspective, it would be absolutely crippling to lose a game of this magnitude.
Yet knowing how poor Utah has been, again, namely offensively, losing for BYU would be devastating with so much on the line, too, in a top 10 ranking beside your name. The Cougars going for glory this week and trying to get themselves to a Big 12 championship. Jake, coming up, I want perspective on this rivalry, and I want your prediction for how this week's game is going to go. Here at a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cougars crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.